Some people think a house is just walls and a door with a lock. I used to think that too, before I understood how many people can walk through a door that isn't even theirs. This is the story of the year I found out how many keys existed to my own front door, and what it cost me to ask for just one back. My mother-in-law treated my home like a free restaurant for her relatives, and it took me 2 years to say that sentence out loud. I am Emily, 33, a labor and delivery nurse in Columbus, and this is my story. It started small, a cousin I'd never met sitting at my own kitchen table on a Wednesday afternoon, eating leftovers I'd made the night before. My mother-in-law, Diane, was standing at my stove like she lived there, stirring a pot that wasn't hers, in a house Ryan had bought 2 years before he ever met me. "Oh, don't mind us," she said, not turning around. "Family doesn't need an invitation, honey." I stood in my own doorway holding my keys, coat still on, my grocery bags cutting hard into my fingers, and for the first time I wondered whose house this actually was. My husband, Ryan, wasn't home yet. I didn't know his relatives had a way in. I didn't know yet how many of them did, or how long it had already been happening behind my back, quietly, one Wednesday at a time. Ryan came home to find his cousin still there, plate in his lap, feet on my coffee table like it was his own living room. "That's just Danny," Ryan said, like the name alone explained everything I was feeling. His mom smiled at me the way she always did, like she was doing me a favor by existing there. I asked her, gently, if next time she could call first before letting herself in. His mom laughed, soft and quick, like I'd made a small joke. "Call first, Emily, this is family, you don't knock on family." Ryan didn't back me up. He just refilled his water and said, "It's not a big deal, is it?" That night I lay awake counting the number of times this month someone had let themselves in. 4. My closest friend Jade told me on the phone the next morning, "That's not hospitality, Emily, that's a habit." I didn't argue. I just didn't know yet how deep the habit went, or how many other people already had a way through my door without me ever once saying yes. By the 3rd week I stopped being surprised and started keeping count instead. My father-in-law, Gerald, came by twice to check the water heater, though nothing had ever been wrong with it. His mom brought 2 aunts I'd met exactly once at my own wedding, and they sat at my table like it was assigned seating from the start. I made a decision quietly. I would ask for a short family meeting, calm, no accusations, just one simple rule. "Text before you come over." His mom's face changed when I said it, just for a second before she smoothed it back over completely. "We've never needed rules before," she said. "I don't want this house to feel like a hotel with a front desk." I said quietly that I didn't want it to feel like a restaurant either. Nobody laughed at that. Ryan looked down at his plate and didn't say a single word in my defense. That was the first time I noticed he never once looked at his mother when she was wrong, only at his food, every time she spoke. The rule lasted exactly 9 days. On the 10th, I came home from a double shift to find 3 people in my kitchen I didn't recognize, laughing, a pot already going on my stove. My chest went tight before I understood why it mattered so much. "Diane invited us," one of them said, like that was a key that opened every door in the state. I asked his mom, calmly and quietly, how exactly they'd gotten in this time. She hesitated 1 full second longer than a woman with nothing to hide. "The door was open," she said too quickly, like it settled the matter completely. "It wasn't. I'd locked it myself that morning." I remembered because my hands were full of coffee and I'd fumbled the handle twice. I didn't argue with her that night. I just watched everyone eat dinner in my own kitchen while I stood quietly by the sink. I only understood later that she hadn't been explaining how they'd gotten in. She'd been avoiding the truth that she still had a key of her own, and always had. I found them 2 days later in an old envelope with spare keys inside, tucked in a kitchen drawer at his mom's house, when I stopped by to return a casserole dish I had borrowed earlier. 4 small brass keys, unlabeled, sitting together like they had always quietly been sitting there. His mom caught me looking. "Oh, those," she said, waving a hand like it was nothing at all. Years ago when Ryan traveled for work, I had copies cut for anyone who might need to check on the house. His aunt had one. His cousin had one, apparently without my knowledge or consent. The problem was never that the keys existed. The problem was that nobody had ever once thought I deserved a say in who kept them, or why. People who had never asked whose house it was had a piece of metal in their pocket proving they didn't need to. I drove home with my hands shaking on the wheel, and somewhere between her driveway and mine, I stopped being confused and started being someone who needed answers. I asked Ryan straight out that night, "Did you know your family had keys to our house this whole time?" He went quiet in a way that answered the question before he actually did. "I knew my mom had one," he said. "I didn't know she'd given copies to half the family." That gap, knowing one small thing but never the scale of it, was the part that scared me most. His mom found out I knew because Ryan told her, and she called me the next morning, warm as ever, like nothing had happened. "Don't make this into something ugly," she said. It was never about control, Emily. It was about making sure family always had a place to go. Ryan had bought the house years before we met, but after our wedding we refinanced it together, and my name went on everything his did. A place she'd never once asked to enter properly, not once, not since. I didn't argue with her at all. I just started making a list quietly of every single name attached to every single key. I had already asked Ryan to set boundaries. I had already given his family a chance to respect one simple rule. I didn't scream. I didn't confront anyone at a dinner table. I called a locksmith on a Tuesday morning while Ryan was at work, and I watched a stranger take my old lock off my door in minutes. It felt smaller than I expected, just a few screws, a click, a new brass cylinder answering to nobody yet. That evening Ryan came home tired and, without being asked, made us both tea and sat with me quietly on the porch steps before either of us said one word. Then I handed him exactly 2 new keys, one for him, one for me, and told him there wouldn't be a third unless we agreed together, out loud. He looked at the keys like they were heavier than metal usually is. I kept avoiding this, he said quietly, because fixing it meant disappointing my mom. I know, I said. That's why it took me this long too. He nodded and didn't look away. His mom came by 3 days later and found her key didn't turn in the lock anymore. She stood on my porch, knocking, for the first time in all the years I'd known her. I opened the door and watched her face try 3 different expressions before settling on hurt. You changed the locks on your own family, she said, like I'd done something cruel to her personally. I changed the locks on my own house, I said calmly. She looked past me into the kitchen like she was checking whether anything had actually changed inside it, and I understood, watching her do that this was never really about casseroles or cousins at all. It was about a woman who needed every door in her son's life to open for her without ever asking first. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't list her offenses, I just said, "You're welcome here anytime you call first," and I meant every word of it, and I closed the door gently on a woman standing outside her own son's home for the first time in her life. The family found out fast, the way families always do in a small town. Some of them agreed with me quietly, in private texts they wouldn't ever say out loud at dinner. Others said I'd embarrassed his mom, that I'd made a simple thing complicated for absolutely no real reason at all. Ryan's aunt quietly returned her key without a single word, just left it in an envelope in the mailbox, and I understood that as its own quiet kind of apology. His mom herself never apologized, not directly, but she started calling before she came over, every single time now without fail, and I noticed she never quite met my eyes when she said hello at the door anymore. That was fine with me. I didn't need her to feel comfortable in my own house. I needed my own home to feel like mine again, and slowly, room by room, it actually started to. Ryan began saying our house instead of my mom's second kitchen, which was its own small, strange kind of victory nobody but me would ever really notice or measure properly. Here's what actually changed in the end, not the family, not really, but the door itself. I control who walks through mine now, and that control turned out to be the whole point all along, more than any of us ever fully realized. The moral I keep coming back to is simple. Love doesn't require a key to your house, and if someone insists it does, that was never really about love to begin with. If this story felt familiar to you, if you've ever stood in your own kitchen wondering whose house it really was, I'm grateful you stayed to hear how it ended for me. Like this video if it stayed with you, subscribe if you want more stories like mine, and tell me in the comments, has someone in your life ever made you feel like a guest in your own home? She still doesn't have unlimited access to my home. If there's ever an emergency key again, it will be because Ryan and I decided that together, out loud, the way it always should have been from the start.